Okay, good morning, everybody. It is exactly 10 o'clock, so I will call the meeting to order. Item 2 on our agenda is a resolution of commendation for Debbie Hayes. And once I get down front, I will ask the clerk to read the resolution.
Whereas Debbie Hayes was hired by the City of Oklahoma City on June 13, 1986, and as Retirement System Analyst for the Oklahoma City Employee Retirement System on November 27, 2000, for a total of city and system service of 33 years and 5 months. Whereas Debbie brought to the position payroll and benefits experience she acquired while working for the city. Debbie was awarded the Certificate of Achievement in Public Plan Policy from the International Foundation of Employee Benefit Plans for her knowledge and expertise in the field of public pension plans. Whereas she has always had a keen interest in public policy and a strong commitment to the betterment of the Oklahoma City Employee Retirement System. Whereas Debbie has performed her duties as Retirement System Analyst with excellence and in the best interest of Oklahoma City Employee Retirement System members and beneficiaries. Debbie has excellent customer service skills in assisting active and retired members and has always been very responsive in serving member needs, and she will be greatly missed. Now therefore be it resolved by the Oklahoma City Employee Retirement System that the fine contribution of Debbie Hayes be acknowledged, and she is hereby commended for her continued public service.
Okay, first thing is I have to have a motion. Second. You have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Guess what? Motion carries. Well, Debbie, I just want to say thank you very much. You have you've done a great job. I've had tons of compliments from employees during my years in public works and now in general services who have worked with you when they're getting ready to leave the city service, and you've been an asset, and it's going to be really hard to fill your shoes. So here's your resolution, and best of luck. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, I just want to thank Debbie also for her service. It has been such an honor and a pleasure working with her for many, many years, even before she transferred to the ERS, the Employee Retirement System Office. So, Debbie, congratulations. Wish you the best of luck. Thank you for everything.
Okay. Moving right along. Item number 3 on the agenda is to approve the minutes of the meeting of October 10th, 2019. Have a motion and a second on item 3. All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries. Item 4 is the consent docket. We have one item. Have a motion and a second on item 4. All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries. Item 5 is to ratify approvals. We have 2 items. Have a motion and a second on item 5. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Item 6 is to approve the claims docket. I have a motion and a second on item 6. All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries. Item 7 is to approve the following application for service retirement. I have a motion and a second on item 7. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Item 8 is to receive report of death, authorize payment of the $5,000 death benefit, and approve continuation of pension to spouse. I have a motion and a second on item 8. All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries. Item 9 is to receive report of death, authorize payment of the $5,000 death benefit, authorize secretary to make necessary changes to conform on the following. I have a motion and a second on item 9. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Item 10 is to receive report of death, authorize secretary to make necessary changes to conform on the following. I have a motion and a second on item 10. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Item 11 is to receive report of death, death of employee while in active service, approve pension to spouse. I have a motion and a second on item 11. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Item number 12 is items for individual consideration. Item 12A is approve the statement of investment policy objective guidelines. I looked through this yesterday and this morning again, and
You can't find the change?
well, no, actually the only change I saw were there were 4 places where we required quarterly written statements.
So the change, there's one change. So just as a reminder, at the last meeting, we had some modifications to the investment policy statement, mostly surrounding the asset allocation. Those were all approved. A few days after your October meeting, we got a call from Intech, and they made a slight modification to their guidelines, but it impacted the investment policy statement. And that is on page 6 of the document. And so these are related to your large cap equity manager. Again, it's related to Intech. And under paragraph 2, common stock guidelines, bullet point C, it says for Intech, the security position constraints for the broad enhanced plus strategy are the individual security positions limited to, previously it said 1% plus the benchmark, and they have changed their process to allow for a 2% plus the benchmark weight of the security at the time of purchase. So we're comfortable with that change and recommend that you guys adopt that. This is a separately managed account, so they can't incorporate that change into your portfolio until the guidelines are approved. And that's the only change.
Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion on item 12A. I have a motion and a second on item 12A. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Item 13 is the investment consultant report.
Okay. So I passed out our brown book, which is our September 30th quarterly performance report, as well as updated numbers through October. So last month when Jason was here, he covered performance through September, but we just have some more detailed numbers and statistics in here that we would like to cover. Maybe if you flip to hang on one second. Flip to page 11, behind tab 1. And then while we're talking about that, if you flip to page 7 on the stapled piece, both of these provide an update on the market. One in the brown book is through September, and the staple piece is through October. But just to kind of give you an update and a reminder where we were at the end of September, and then to give you an update where we are through the end of October. So at the end of September, markets were very strong so far this year. We've experienced a lot of volatility in the markets, primarily due to uncertainty related around international trade policy. Within the fixed income markets, we've seen a flight to quality and a lot of dollars moving into U.S. Treasuries, which has really brought the return to the Bloomberg U.S. aggregate, really at all-time highs. You'll see that year-to-date return through September at 8.5%. 1 year at 10.3%. So as money came into U.S. Treasuries, rates dropped, and the value of the bonds go up. And so there's an inverse relationship there. And we've seen very strong returns within the fixed income markets. When you look at that 1 year column through September 30th, you'll notice that the Bloomberg U.S. aggregate is the best performing asset class over that 1 year time period. That has since changed through the end of October, where we've had a significant increase in the 1 year returns for the broad equity markets. Through the end of September, the S&P 500, the 1 year return was 4.3%, and at the end of October, it jumped up to 14.3%. And that's because in September of 2018, in October of 2018, we had some tough times in the broad equity markets. And so those numbers came off, and you roll on good numbers, and you've seen a significant increase in the 1 year returns over that time period. Within the small cap, as represented by Russell 2000, you have very similar results. The 1 year return through the end of September, down 8.9%. At the end of October, that return is now positive 4.9%. Within international markets, when you look at the MSCI EFA, that represents international developed markets, the return, again, was negative 0.8 basis points, and that has jumped to 11.6% for the 1 year period. So very strong results, over the trailing 1 year for broad equity markets. Fixed income, still strong, as well as 11.5%. I think looking ahead that, it's just important to remind everybody that these are very unusual results for fixed income portfolio. And it's more likely that we'll see results, in the range of 3.5% to 4%, particularly where we are with current yields and how low they are today. It's going to be tough to, get maybe more than a 5% return from the fixed income portfolio. And then when the equities, equities are priced high today, valuations are high. The Fed cut rates again. So we've seen 3 interest rate cuts this year, and has really helped continue this economic expansion, for the foreseeable future, at least looking out the next 6 months. We think markets will continue to perform, but there's also a lag effect with, when the Fed cuts rates and how that impacts the market. There's still some unknowns related to trade policy, U.S. and China. So that could impact, if there was a surprise there, that could impact the markets. But looking at your portfolio, it's done very well, up almost 15% year to date through the end of October. But before we get there, maybe flip behind tab 2. And go to page 24. Here we put the portfolio in dollar terms. And so at the beginning of the year, on January 1st of 2019, the portfolio was valued at $683 million. $22.3 million has left the portfolio, and you've had a return on investment that's capital gains of $89.9 million, ending at the end of September at $750 million. Over 5 and 10 years, you can see the return on investment is $220 million over 5 years and $496 million over 10 years. So very strong growth in the portfolio over the last 5 and 10 years. Looking at page 25, this tells how the portfolio is doing relative to the broad investment objectives that are listed in your investment policy statement. And so the very first bullet point there says the total portfolio should exceed the actuarial rate of return over a complete market cycle. That current rate is 7.1%, and over 5 years the portfolio has not achieved that. It's up 6.56%, and over 10 years it has met that objective at 8.5%. In addition to that absolute return objective, we also look at some relative statistics, and we say, how has the portfolio performed versus a passive policy index? And it has beat the policy index over 5 years. You'll see that 6.09% versus 6.56%, and over 10 years, 8.03% versus 8.5%. And then we also say how much risk are we taking on in the portfolio to achieve these returns? And so that's what the next bullet point measures. You'll see the total portfolio has a lower standard deviation than the broad markets, 6.9% versus 7.3%, and over 10 years, 7.3% versus 7.8%. So you're achieving a higher return while taking on less risk in the portfolio. These returns on this page are gross of fees. And then lastly, we say, you know, what's the sensitivity to the overall markets? And you want to be less than a 1 there. And so both over 5 and 10 years, overall portfolio has less sensitivity to the direction of the markets. And then also the last bullet point says, how does the portfolio do in a declining market environment? And ideally, you want to participate in up markets while also protecting in down markets or a negative market environment. And you can see, so you want that number to be less than 100. And so you can see over 5 and 10 years, the portfolio is providing some downside protection. So what that's saying is, if the market was down 10%, over 5 years, the portfolio would be down 8.84%. And over 10 years, would be down 8.9%. So you would be down less than the overall markets. So very, very strong risk and return statistics at the total portfolio level. Page 26 looks at the target asset allocations. These are as of September 30th, and so you still see the 5% target return to commodities, and the core real estate and opportunistic real estate are still at 6% and 4% target. That a change was adopted at the October meeting, and so we show that on the October ASAP, and we removed the target allocation to commodities. That was adjusted to 0, and the core real estate was updated to a target of 10%, and opportunistic real estate was updated to 15%, still leaving the overall target to real assets at 15%. And you can see that on page 1 of the ASAP, which is the stapled piece. You'll see that allocation removed there. Just as a reminder, that'll take time to implement. We did make a recommendation, and Renee has the paperwork, to commit another $9 million to the Morgan Stanley Real Estate Fund. That'll bring that up to 10% target. Currently, the allocation is at 8.6%, so by allocating an additional 9, it'll get it real close to the 10%. And then that will come from commodities, so we'll start winding down that commodity allocation over time. There is a entry queue for the real estate, so it's likely to be 2 quarters before that money is invested. So you'll continue to see that on the performance report. On page 27, we show the exposure to emerging market equities. And at the very top, total portfolio exposure to emerging market equities is at 9.2%. Most of that is coming from, you have 2 dedicated emerging market managers, Wasatch and Wells, which accounts for 5% of that overall 9%. And then Harding, Loevner, and Lazard both have an allocation to emerging market equities. They're your 2 international managers. And then some of your fixed income managers also have a small allocation to emerging markets. Looking at page 28, this provides results through the end of September. So through the end of September, the total return for the portfolio was at 13.2%. If you look at the second page of the October performance report, you'll see that that return has jumped up to 14.9%. So almost 15% return through October, very strong results. A lot of that has come from your equity managers as well as your fixed income. When you look at the results relative to the policy index, year to date you are lagging, through the end of October, but that can be attributable to your fixed income managers. While the total return for fixed income is up 8.3, which is very strong on an absolute basis, it is lagging the Bloomberg U.S. Aggregate Index, which is at 8.9. And again, that's because we've seen this flight to quality within fixed income. And your portfolio is diversified and has less exposure to U.S. Treasuries by design. And that is so that the overall portfolio has less sensitivity to U.S. interest rates. And so as we've seen interest rates come down, U.S. securities or U.S. bonds did very well, and your portfolio is more diversified that. So by not owning those securities, you didn't do as well as the benchmark, but we think it makes sense to continue to have that diversified portfolio, to have exposure to other segments of the bond market, both in the U.S. and non-U.S., as well as, investment-grade corporate bonds, high yield, emerging market debt, and other factors. So over time, the diversified, and historically, the diversified portfolio has paid off. It's just over the short-term time period where we've seen this rally in U.S. bonds, it's lagging a bit. But returns on an absolute basis, very, very strong, both through the end of September and October, just lagging the policy index a bit. When looking at the total portfolio results versus a peer group, you can see this is page 28 in the bound book. So the portfolio was up 13.2%, ranking in the 45th percentile, and that's versus other public funds, so other pension plans in the public fund universe. Typically, you want that number to be below 50. And so when you look down, the column there, you'll see, and we like to look at that over longer time periods, really over 5 and 10 years, and you'll see the portfolio ranks in the 44th percentile over 5 years and in the 31st percentile over 10 years. So strong results on an absolute basis as well. And then lastly, we graph on page 29 in this upper left-hand corner, we graph the portfolio and how the risk-return characteristics. And so you'll see here that light blue box represents your portfolio, so you have a higher return with less risk. That dark blue box represents the policy index, and so you want to be in the upper left quadrant of that graph there. Any questions on the total portfolio?
Any questions for Patty?
No.
Great job. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Item number 14 is comments from board, staff, and citizens. It would be entirely inappropriate of me not to mention that this is the final meeting for our esteemed city treasurer, Bob Ponkilla, who is retiring December 2nd. Bob, I've known you for the entirety of my almost 32 years at the city. You exemplify professionalism. Not only are you a excellent employee, but I consider it a privilege to count you as a very good friend. And you have very large shoes to fill. And I'm sure the board feels that way also. So thank you very much, and good luck in your retirement. Any other comments?
I'd like to echo those sentiments, but I would like to say if you didn't do your job, we would be hearing about it on this board specifically, and we very much appreciate your work with the trustee, and welcome, Matt, and wish you well in retirement.
I just want to wish you the best, Bob. It has been certainly a pleasure working with you all of these years in various capacities. Your retirement will be felt by this organization. As Paul said, you leave very large shoes to fill, but I wish you and Felice the very best as you venture into this next area of your life. Thank you.
I would just like to reiterate, I've told Bob this a couple of times, but you, when I look at a public servant, and somebody that the community can look at and know that the assets are being safeguarded and managed well. There's nothing. Bob Ponkilla is the bar, and it's a high bar, and he is a consummate professional. The way he runs his organization, the way he grows his staff, the leadership that he provides will be missed. But I wish you nothing but the best, and Thank you for all your hard work over the 36 years. Okay. All right. But thank you, Bob.
Okay. We are adjourned at 10:25. Thank you, everyone.